Hello. So today I'm continuing playing games that I own that I've only played once. Next on the list is Nile's DeLuxor. I played this back in 2013, so it's been about 7 years ago. Uh, didn't remember much about it. I played it with my daughter one time. Um, Again, since it's a game I only played once, I'm guessing I probably didn't care too much for it. But I'm going to go ahead and play it, and then I will do a setup and go over the rules and a couple of sample turns so you can see how it works. Okay, well, for setup, first of all, there's 7 different crops. You can see, there's a deck of cards that count as your crops, and you've got papyrus, wheat, lettuce, castor, flax, grape, and onion. Then depending on the number of players, you'll remove some of those crop cards from the game. There's also these speculation cards that they're associated with a couple of crops. So I'm going to play a 3-player game, so when you're playing between 2 and 4 players, you remove 2 crops and all the associated speculation cards. So I'm going to remove lettuce and onion and the associated speculation cards. This one has onion on it, so it comes out. So there's several there, but so I'm taking those 2 out, and this will make the deck I'm playing with. Okay, first thing you do is take the flood card and place it in the middle of the table. There's a plague and locust card, one single card, which you set aside. And there's also these season cards, which you'll set aside. Shuffle the deck of your crop and speculation cards, which I've done. And then you'll deal 5 cards to each player. So I've done that for my 3 players here. Then after you've dealt the cards to each player, you mix the plague card back into the deck. So I'll do that. Okay, I've got that plague card mixed into my deck. Then you randomly select a starting player and start the game. And each turn will consist of a flood, a harvest, trade, plant or speculate, and draw phase. Alright, so it's the first player's turn, so the first thing they do is flip over the top card, and that becomes the flood card. That's the flood phase. And that card determines what crops can be harvested. Now, in the very first turn of the game, nobody has any crops out, so there won't be any cards to be harvested. But it also determines what cards can be planted. And you cannot plant the card that comes up in the flood phase. So as I mentioned, after the flood, which is basically just revealing the top card and putting on the flood card, then you would do harvest. And as I said, in the first turn, nobody has any cards planted or fields planted. But if they did, if you had some wheat, if a player had a wheat field planted, then because wheat came up as the flood card, they could take the top card from their wheat field, which we'll see when we get into the player turns, and put it into their storage. And that's just cards that are set aside for scoring later. Now, if a speculation card comes up, as I've shown, they have 2 like here, let me find an example from one that I removed. If a speculation card comes up during the flood, then whichever 2 crops it shows, those can both be harvested. And it's not just the player whose turn it is that can harvest, it's any player that happens to have the wheat field planted, they can harvest. Okay, next thing you have is the trade phase. And in the trade phase, you can discard any 2 cards from your hand or from your storage, and you can either take a card from the top of the pile to your hand, or you can take the top card and make that the new flood card, and then players can harvest that card just like if it was the original flood card for the turn. And you can do as many trades as you want. So, if I wanted to trade this flax and papyrus and draw a card, and then trade this speculation and wheat card, I could draw another card or make it the flood card. You can do that as many times as you want on your turn, as long as you have the cards to do it. So the next phase is the plant or speculate phase. So if this is, my hand of cards, I can plant if I decide to plant, I can plant at least 2 cards of one crop type. If I had more, I could plant more, but if I'm going to do one crop type, I have to do at least 2. Or I can plant exactly 2 cards of differing crops. Now remember, even though I have a wheat, I can't plant wheat because that came up as the flood card. So you can't plant what the flood card is. But I could plant exactly 2 cards of differing crops. Now if I already had a crop, say of papyrus, and I wanted to plant 2 cards of differing crops, I could still plant one on my papyrus and then a different card like that. Or if you have crops out in front of you, you can plant any number of cards to any number of fields that already exist in front of you. So if I had some more out here, I can't really show an example. If I had a wheat or whatever, then I could plant, wheat, a papyrus, and a flax if I had that in my hand. Well, not a wheat because that came up, but I'm just trying to give an example. We'll see as we play. And one other rule about planting is you cannot plant a field or a crop if somebody else has that field or that crop, unless you're going to plant a larger crop. So let me see if I can explain. So say this player has flax and papyrus, and he's got 2 in this papyrus. Well, no other player on their turn can plant flax or papyrus unless they're going to plant a field with more cards. So if the next player, it's their turn to plant, they could plant 2 flax, and then I would have to discard mine, and then they would have the flax field. Or if somebody wanted to plant 3 papyrus, then they could do that, and I would have to discard mine. But they couldn't plant 1 or 2 papyrus because I've already got that much. So they have to be able to plant a greater amount. Otherwise, they have to plant a different type of field. And if you decide not to plant, you can play a speculation card instead, 1 or 2 speculation cards. And what that's doing is, like if a player plays this speculation card, he's guessing that on the next player's turn, when they do the flood phase and turn over the top card, that it's going to be either a flax or a caster. And if it is, then they get to draw, the player that played the speculation card gets to draw 3 cards into their hand. If you played 2 cards and you were right on both of them, then you get to draw 6 cards into your hand. And if you're wrong, or after you were right and after you've collected your cards, then your speculation cards just go into the discard pile. Then the last thing you do on your turn after you've either planted or speculated is draw 2 more cards to your hand from the deck. then you may remember that we had that plague and locust card. If that comes up, if you draw that, or if that comes up in the flood, then the player who has the largest field out, the field with the most cards in it, that gets consumed by the locust, and that player has to discard all those cards to the discard pile. So that's how the turns go. After you draw your cards, then at the next player's turn, and then they'll flip over a flood card, and then you'll do everybody will harvest if they can. Then you can do a trade if you want to. As I said, trade 2 cards for 1, or then you plant or speculate, and then you draw your cards. And so that's how it goes. Each player taking their turn. When the deck runs out the first time, then in the first time around, it's season 1. When the deck runs out, you shuffle and start over again with the deck, and you go to season 2, and you play a number of times. You reshuffle the deck after it runs out a number of times equal to the number of players. So in a 3-player game, you would play 3 seasons, and after the deck runs out the 3rd time in a 3-player game, then you would score. And scoring is, you'll take your storage pile. Remember, I said when you harvest, you take a card off your field and put it in your storage pile. So for scoring, you separate all your cards by crop type. Starting with the crop you have the most of, you put it in the rightmost pile, and then with the second most, the next pile, all the way down to the pile you have the least of. So here's an example in the rules. And then the winner is the player who has the most cards in their leftmost pile. So in this example, you can see that this player would lose because the other players have more crop types. These players have the same amount of crop types, but this player in his leftmost pile has 2, whereas this player in his leftmost pile only has 1 card. So this player would end up winning. So you're trying to get the most different types of crops, as well as the most of each of those crops. And whoever does that is the winner. And you'll see it says the Monuments expansion. There's an expansion that adds stone cards and some monuments, which I'm not going to explain that. I didn't play with that, but it's basically you're just adding another crop type, only it's stone, and the player with the most of those gets to pick one of these monuments, and it gives them a special power. But if you want to read exactly how to play that, it comes with the game, or at least it came with the version that I have. But I'm going to go ahead and go through some turns and then give you my thoughts on it. I really got to clean this glue off of my table. Anyway, all right, so it's first player's turn. He flipped over the wheat as his flood card. So this is his hand of cards. He can't plant the wheat, obviously. Like I said, you can plant 2 different crops, or multiple cards of 1 crop, or he can play a speculation card instead. So I think what this guy's going to do is plant a flax and a papyrus fields. And then he didn't do a trade. He didn't want to trade. So now that's all he's going to do for his turn. Now he draws 2 more cards. All right. So now it comes to player 2's turn here. So first thing he does is the flood. So he turns over a wheat also. So now if anybody had planted wheat, the only person that's planted so far is this guy, and he does not have wheat. So now we go to where this guy could trade if he wanted to. But I don't think he wants to trade anything. He may want to trade these 2 wheat. Yeah, we'll just say for an example, just to show. All right, he's going to trade 2 wheat. This will be our discard pile up here, and he's going to draw 1 card to his hand. Now he could trade again if he wanted to, but instead he's going to go ahead and plant. He can't plant flax because this guy's planted, unless he wanted to plant 2. He could do that. I'll just show that for an example. So he's going to plant 2 flax. Now he's planted more than this, so this guy has to discard his. And now he's going to just draw his 2 cards into his hand. Okay, now we go to the next player's turn. So he's going to do the flood phase. And it's a speculation, so flax and papyrus are on here. So this guy's planted papyrus so he can harvest it. So he goes ahead and puts that into his storage pile. So that'll be what he'll use for scoring later. This guy has flax. You can only take 1 off of your field. So no matter how many you have here, you can only harvest 1 and put it in your storage. And he doesn't have any. So then when you've drawn for a flood, when you've drawn the speculation card, after anybody's harvested that, then you go ahead and draw another one. And that becomes... maybe I didn't shuffle very good. I keep getting these wheats. Anyway, so wheat again. So now he's got to see what he wants to do. He's going to plant a castor. And remember, again, he can't plant flax because this guy, but he can plant grapes. So he's going to plant a castor and a grapes. Remember, you can plant 2 cards of different fields, so that's the most he can do. Then he's going to draw 2 cards to his hand. Alright, then we come back to the first player. Okay, so the first player is going to do the flood, and he drew a castor. So now for harvest, remember that this player had castor, so he can go ahead and harvest that, put that into his storage. And now this player's turn. He can trade if he wants to, or he can plant. So I just want to show what a speculation. So he doesn't want to trade. He's going to do a speculation. So he's got a flax castor. So he's speculating that the next player, when he does a flood card, it's going to be a flax or a castor. Now I go ahead and that's all I'm going to do. So now I draw them at 2 cards to my hand. It's now player 2's turn. So he's going to draw his flood card, and it is a castor, which is what this guy speculated. So he goes ahead and draws 3 cards to his hand. And he gets to put them in his hand, and now this just gets discarded. And now, that's the flood card. So now this guy looks at his cards. He's got flax planted, so he can add another card to that, and then plant a papyrus. And then he draws 2 cards. And then it's now the third player's turn, so he flips over a flood card, and it's grapes. Now he had a grapes planted, so he can now harvest that. Nobody else has any grapes planted. Well, nobody would, because again, only one player can have a crop type. So only one player would ever really be able to harvest. All right. Alright, so it's his turn. He can't plant grapes because that's the flood card. He can't plant flax because he's only got 1, and this guy's got a field size of 2. So he could trade, but let's just say he's going to play, you can play up to 2 speculation cards. So he's going to play both of these, which one's a castor wheat and one's a castor grape. So that's instead of planting, he's going to speculate, and then he draws 2 cards to his hand. And it's back to the first player, so he picks a flood card. And it is a caster. And this guy had caster on both his speculation cards, so now he gets to draw 6 cards. Because he got it right on both cards. 3, 4, 5, 6. So those go to his hand. And I have my hands face up, but of course normally each player would, have their hand turned toward themselves so the other players wouldn't know what they had. But anyway, it was first player's turn. He got caster, so now he's going to see what he wants to do. Let's say he's going to plant. He could plant 3 papyrus, or he could plant, 2 grapes. Well, actually, he could plant the 3 papyrus, but if he does, then this guy has to discard his. So the only crop he's harvested is so far is papyrus. So he wants to maybe get something else because you want to get different crops. So he's going to plant a wheat and a grapes, and then he'll draw his 2 cards. So that'll end his turn. Okay, come to the next player. He's flooding with a wheat, so player 1, because he has wheat, he gets to harvest that. And now this guy, he can't plant, well, he can plant these grapes, and he'll discard that guy's crop. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to plant 3 grapes, and because that's more than this guy's crop, he has to discard his grapes. And then that's all that guy can plant. If you plant multiple cards of one crop type, of one new crop type, then that's all you can plant. So again, you can plant multiple cards of one crop type, exactly 2 cards of differing crop types, or any number of crops to any number of fields you already had. So like on my if on my next turn I had a flax and a papyrus and a grape, I could add those in there. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do, and then I draw my 2 cards. And then it's player's 3 turn, player 3's turn. So he does a flood, and he got flax, so now this guy gets to harvest one of his flax. And then he decides, what he wants to do. He could trade cards, but he'll do a wheat and a caster. And then he gets to draw 2. And back to player 1. So player 1's turn again. I'm going to go ahead and play ahead a little bit just so you can see when we reshuffle the deck and go to Season 2. Remember, we're on Season 1, which is the first time through the deck. Alright, I've played ahead a little bit. It's second player's turn. He's just going to play a Speculate. And now he draws 2. And that is going to empty the deck. So now we'll shuffle the flood deck and the discards, and we'll go to Season 2. And as you'll see, then the second time around the deck will not be quite as large as the first time because players have cards out on the board, they've got cards in their hand, they've got cards in their storage pile. So each season goes a little bit quicker because there's not near as many cards in the deck. So I'm going to go ahead and shuffle these, and the plague that got played, when I was doing through my play through, and when it came out, third player had a field with 4 flax in it, and he had to discard all of those. So let me shuffle these up. Alright, I've shuffled that up, got the flood card back out. The last thing that happened is, the second player played this speculation, so it's third player's turn now. And he's going to do a flood, which is flax. Nobody has that, so nobody gets to harvest. And this guy's speculation was papyrus and wheat, so he was wrong, so that just gets put out. And now we're back to third player deciding what he wants to do. He can't plant the papyrus. Well, he could, because he's only got a 1 papyrus field, so he could do that. Or he could plant 3 grapes and put this guy out. So let's say he's going to do that. So he's going to plant a 3 grape field. So this guy will have to discard his. And then he'll draw 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and play through till we get to the end of the 3rd season. And then I'll show you scoring. Okay, I actually just went to season 3, and I just wanted to show how small the deck was when I got to season 3. So we'll go through that one pretty fast. I'll play off camera a couple of rounds, and I'll come back just as we're getting to the end and do a couple more turns, and then you'll see scoring. All right, I'm gonna come back, film video the last couple rounds. So it's first player's turn. He's got to do the flood. Gets a speculation that's got grapes and wheat. So this guy gets to harvest his wheat. Nobody has grapes. So now since that was a speculation, we flood again, and it's wheat. Nobody has wheat to harvest. So player 1 is going to plant, well, he's going to trade in these 2 wheat, do a trade, and reveal another flood card. And it's wheat again, so that is no good for him. I guess he can't plant the caster. Kind of not sure at this point, because I've only got these 2 cards, and I can't plant the caster, and it says plant exactly 2 cards of differing crops, or 2 cards of at least one type, so I can't really follow the planting rules, and I don't have a card to speculate. And if I discard these 2 cards to draw another card, I'll still only have 1 card. So I'm not really, this is like a little hole in the rules. I guess what I'm going to do is just plant this 1 grape and end my turn. If anybody watching this knows what I should have done in that instance, let me know, because I can't figure it out. It doesn't really say in the rules as far as I can tell. Had to shut my door. The parakeets were making too much noise, my daughter's parakeets. Anyway, alright, so we come to the second player's turn. Oh no, this guy didn't draw his 2 cards at the end of the turn. Alright, so he did that. Alright, second player's turn. He's going to flood. Got a speculation with flax and caster, so he gets to harvest this and this. Then because that was a speculation, oh, another one, wheat and flax. Nobody's got that. So now we still flip over another one, wheat, nobody's got that. So this guy now decides what he wants to do. He's got a bunch of speculation cards, so there's only 1 card left in the deck, so it's really not going to matter. He's going to play those 2 speculation cards. We go to the third player. He flips this over. Nobody has that, and because that stack is now empty, the game immediately ends and we go to scoring. Okay, so everybody can just discard their hands. The only cards that count in the scoring is what you've got in your stockpile or storage piles, and you separate them according to how many you have of each. So let me get everybody separated, and then we'll come and I'll show you how you score and who wins. Well, I may have messed this up because I think I discarded his stockpile or his storage pile, but I think I got it back what it was. So, first player, he loses because he's only got uh, 3 piles. The second player, he's going to win because he got 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he had 1 of each. And the third player only had 4 piles. So, you score from left to right. Whoever has the most cards in their leftmost column. Well, because he didn't have 5, and he didn't have 5, and this guy did have 5, he's got the most cards in his leftmost column, even though it's just 1. But he has 1 flax, so he's going to win. If this guy did have 1 more set of cards, say he had 1 flax, well, then they would tie in that column, and then you'd go to the next column where he has 2 caster and he has 2 wheat, so that would be another tie. So you'd go to the next column where he has 3 papyrus and he only has 2 papyrus, so he would still, well, actually no, that's 2 papyrus and 2 papyrus. So you'd go to the next column where he's only got 3 and he has 4, so then he would win. But because he did not have a 5th crop, it's the second player who wins. So that's the game, Nile DeLuxor. I don't know. I mean, some people may like this game as it's kind of a quick game if everybody knows the rules and what to do. Kind of a quick filler it could be, I guess, but it doesn't really do anything for me. I don't think I would ever suggest playing it to anybody. So that's probably why it's only been played once by me before. Probably the first time I played it, I wasn't too thrilled with it. I don't think I bought this game. I think I won it. I can't remember her. Maybe Marco, the guy that does, the Italian guy that does videos, Marco Anudo. I know I won a contest from him one time and won some games. So maybe this was that, or maybe I got it free at a BGG con or something. I really can't remember, but anyway, this might be somebody's cup of tea. It just doesn't happen to be mine. But I hope I gave you. I know I didn't do a really good rules explanation on this one. At least I don't feel like I did. But anyway, I hope it gives you some idea how it is, and maybe it's a game you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching.